So now what I'm going to discuss is something known as diabetes. And this is when your sugar levels are so high and your body doesn't correct itself. Now, because there's going to be an increased amount of glucose in your body is going to try and get rid of this glucose. And one way it's going to get rid of this glucose is by urine. So one of the symptoms of diabetes will be frequent urination, which can make you more thirsty. Also, the glucose is not entering your cells, so it will make people that have diabetes feel hungry. Now, glucose is needed for respiration. So if you're not getting that glucose into your cells, you're also going to feel more tired if someone has diabetes. It can also cause the lens in the eyes to become more blurred because it becomes more swelled up. High glucose levels can change the water absorption, so it will make the lens swell up. Also, there will be some numbness in the body because it damages the nerves that are transmitting electrical signals throughout the body. Now, there's two types of diabetes. There's type 1, which I'm going to go through now. Now, type 1 is when the immune system accidentally attack the pancreatic cells, which are the ones that produce insulin. So the amount of insulin that the person produces is going to be actually reduced. So it is caused by little, or you could even say no, insulin. Now, as some of you already know, what insulin does is it changes glucose into something called glycogen, where glucose is a monosaccharide, so it's a single sugar. Glycogen is a polysaccharide. It's what happens when the glucose is joined up in a long chain. Now, to manage this, what the person needs to do is inject themselves with insulin, and that will lower their glucose levels. That will go through different ways to manage diabetes, but that will be one of the ways. Type 2 diabetes is when the body becomes resistant to insulin, and because the body is becomes resistant to insulin, what ends up happening is more insulin is actually produced. So the pancreas is producing more insulin, but it cannot keep producing this extra insulin because your body is not reacting to the insulin. So it's like, okay, cool, we're gonna have to make extra insulin, but it cannot keep keeping up with this. And then eventually the glucose levels begin to rise. Now, type 2 diabetes is more in line with being obesity. So it's either by diet or lack of exercise. What needs to be done is basically exercise and injecting insulin. Now, insulin cannot be taken orally because insulin is a protein. So if you take the insulin and it's a protein, if it ends up in the stomach, it's going to be broken down because your stomach has enzymes which break down protein. So you cannot just take insulin as an oral tablet. It must be injected into the fat of your stomach. Sometimes you can inject it in the leg, but different parts of the body it can be injected into. Now, if this is not treated, diabetes is not treated, what the body ends up needing is it needs energy. So it will start breaking down fat for energy. And this makes your body more acidic because when fats are broken down into energy, it releases something called ketones. I'm not going to go too much into depth, but it's not going to be great for the body. It will harm the blood vessels in the eyes, as I went through with some of the symptoms. It could damage the blood vessels to the heart. That could lead to a stroke. The kidneys also needs to get rid of the glucose, so the kidneys will be damaged, and sometimes people need a kidney transplant. Now, people with diabetes, they need to monitor their blood sugar levels, so they have to make sure that their sugar levels are not too high. They have to also eat a meal that is low in carbohydrates because the carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, especially when they eat a carbohydrate meal, maybe go for a run, so some of that glucose can be used up and lower the glucose levels in their blood. So there are monitors where people prick their hand, they get a bit of blood, they monitor their glucose levels in their blood, and they have to be on insulin medication, which is pretty annoying because you have to get the dosages correctly. If you don't take it, it could be dangerous.